you can't really criticize the incorporation of supernatural events in a story that has, like, the Antichrist who has telepathic powers. You know, oh, what about the creepy weirdo who's telling this story? Well, he was a friend of ours who was hiding in the basement. Hello! It is very windy today. So if the mic's picking that up at all, apologies. At the beginning of this year, I read, as a wise man once said, "That's a thick-ass boy." And it is. Specifically this version. This is the complete and uncut version. I also have the regular version of The Stand. But I decided, well, you know what? If I'm going to embark on an epic journey, I might as well commit. But it was a labor of love, I assure you. And the reason why I decided that now was the time to read this is because this bad boy came out. And this is The End of the World as We Know It, which also, it's a big boy. So this is a collection of stories that are written by a lot of very famous authors who are big fans of The Stand, and they just wrote short stories that fit within The Stand world. 34 stories, I think. I may have miscounted. But I'm just going to review a handful of them so you can kind of get an idea of what you can expect out of the collection. There's an introduction by Stephen King, basically giving his blessing to this collection of stories. When I saw this, and I saw so many familiar names in it, I got really excited and I wanted to read it. But I'm like, well, I can't read all these short stories about The Stand without reading The Stand. So this has been a labor of love since the beginning of the year. And now I'm finally ready. Around 2020, due to some things that were happening in the world, it's possible that if you weren't familiar with the plot of The Stand, that it maybe came up at that time. Because the basic premise of The Stand is that there is a superflu that is spreading across the world. People refer to it as Captain Trips. This superflu ends up eliminating 99% of the population. With the remaining population, there is an epic battle between good and evil happening. So you gotta figure that 1% of the population is not very big, and yet it's not like there's just like a little town of 10 people left. You know, like 1% of 8 billion or however many people are in the world is still a lot of people. So when all of this happens, obviously it is very scary, it is very chaotic. A lot of people are losing their entire families, their friends, their children. Many people have lost everybody they know. They might be left in a town with just a handful of people that they've never even met before. It is a very scary, confusing time for all of the survivors of this superflu, this epidemic. The flu also has an effect on certain animals, where I believe cats are immune, but there's certain animals that have also been taken out. And so you might at a glance think that this is like a post-apocalyptic story of survival. And it is, but it's much grander than that. Because amongst the survivors, there are these dual dreams and visions. You may experience dreams where you see this elderly woman who goes by Mother Abigail. She will basically be advising you to come to her. She might give you some direction that there's danger where you're at, that there's evil lurking where you are, and that you need to leave and you need to come to her. And these people having these dreams will have this strange sense of she's at this house in Nebraska, but they don't know how they know that. Once people realize that other people are having the same exact dream and it's not just something weird that they alone are experiencing, a lot of people, they'll come around to the idea of that it's more of a premonition than just a random dream. So a lot of people go ahead and start going towards Nebraska to meet Mother Abigail. And in that journey, they may meet other people on their way. There's this sense of uncertainty. Almost like, well, what else are we gonna do? Like the world has ended. I don't have to go to my job. My family is dead. I don't know what else to do. And so a lot of people just are sort of going and hoping that something comes of it, or that she's real, or they're just looking to find other people so they're not alone. But there are other dreams and visions from somebody else. And this somebody else goes by several different names. His name is Randall Flagg, but he's kind of scary. When people have their dreams, they don't see his face, and so sometimes he's referred to as the Dark Man, the Walking Man, and he's telling people that they should be coming to Las Vegas. His approach is not necessarily friendly, it's more threatening in nature, or sometimes he will actually physically go out and introduce himself to people. He'll find people who are in a vulnerable position. For example, there's a man who's in prison. Everyone around him, the other inmates, the guards, everybody else is dead from the super flu. He's locked in his cell. There's nobody there to bring him food or to let him out, and so he is very much at risk of just starving to death. Now, Randall Flagg, who is not a normal dude, as you would think from the fact that he can project himself into people's dreams and whatnot, he knows that man is there, and he goes and he's like, I can let you out, but you're gonna owe me. He's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart. He's doing it so that person feels indebted to him. And so, as you can probably guess, Randall Flagg is basically the Antichrist. He is a representative of evil. Mother Abigail is basically a prophet. She's kind of just a deeply religious woman who God is using as a conduit to appeal to people and to be the one to appear in their dreams and whatnot. Just know at this point that Randall Flagg is representing evil. Mother Abigail is representing good, if we're just boiling it down to the simplest terms. So when people are experiencing often dual dreams, they'll have dreams about Mother Abigail, but then they'll also have these nightmares about the Dark Man. It's sort of like an opportunity for them to choose. Do they want to go by Mother Abigail, or do they want to go by Randall Flagg? It's not necessarily that everybody who wants to go by Flagg is a bad, evil person. He does appeal to people who are drawn to power and to control. People who, well, I don't necessarily think that he's a good guy, but I think he's going to win. Because you get this sense that these are opposing groups. There is an appeal to this sort of authority and this militant approach to things, very controlled, intimidating, which is kind of the opposite of Mother Abigail, who's literally 108. She's just this small elderly woman chosen by God. Why did he choose her? Is it just because she's a deeply religious woman and so he's like, oh well, she'll listen to me? Is it that simple? Or is part of it the fact that when she appears in people's dreams, because of her appearance, because of her general vibes, that it's not intimidating, that there's something comforting and welcoming about her, and that's the sort of energy that the good side wants to reciprocate. They want people to want to be a part of the good side. There's a lot of characters in this. We're not going to go over all of them. To be blunt, there's just too many. But you do have some main players. And in the beginning of the book, you're getting a lot of their background in the very early stages of the superflu, when people just are starting to get sick, but people don't realize how deadly it is. Are those events ultimately relevant to the overall arching narrative of good versus evil? No, not really. But it helps shape these characters so that as these characters are fighting on the good or the bad side, you have a reason to give a shit about them. It helps frame why they are the way that they are and why they do the things that they do and think the way that they think. And so you're getting background on a lot of different characters. In the group for Mother, Abigail initially is meeting at her house, but eventually they all travel to Boulder, Colorado, and that is kind of their home base. And so obviously there are stragglers. Not everybody is meeting there at the same time. You got these home bases, Las Vegas for evil and Boulder, Colorado for good. And so as the people are gathering here, you do get to see a lot of the different characters on both sides. And there's this weird sort of tension where everybody knows that, not necessarily that this is good versus evil in those blatant of terms, but there is this sense of, oh, we're not just gonna coexist, where they're gonna be chilling in Colorado and we're gonna be over here and we'll just leave each other alone. You know, people might try to give that impression at times, but everybody has a sense that these two groups cannot coexist, and that at some point in one way or another, they are going to try to eliminate each other. So they're both trying to rebuild civilization with the people that are left. And you have all these small groups of people in the same way that you would see in like a zombie apocalypse or something, where you just come across other survivors and you band together instinctually. And so you have these sort of groups that are then coming into the safe zone or whatever and having to acclimate to the culture, the civilization that they're trying to rebuild at that point in that place, because they know that they can't trust each other. There is this sense of trying to send spies to the other group to get intel. Eventually, all of these things will come to a head, and there is a battle with the people that are left and the forces at be, good versus evil. Who's gonna win? You can just get a sense, like if you think about a story that is about good versus evil, it's something that is so simple, but is so incredibly complex. You think about something that a lot of us can relate to, not the extremeness of 99% of the population being taken out, but obviously 2020 was not that long ago. So it's that sort of confusion and new information constantly, constantly trickling in, trying to adjust with new information and what's real and what's not, what's right, who's trying to trick you, who's trying to take advantage of you, what's real and what's not, and who can we trust, and all those feelings of confusion when you're just trying to do the right thing and get through your day. Now you take that to the extreme in this case. And I'm going to give you a few of the characters because, again, there are a lot of them. So we're not going to get into all of them. So if you've read this and you're like, hey, you didn't mention so-and-so, like, I'm sorry, they didn't make the cut. You know, the book I read may have been uncut, but my review is not. Mother Abigail. Already covered her. 108-year-old woman who is a prophet of the Lord. Well-intentioned, trying to be an accurate vessel of what God is telling her, but she is just a human woman that God is communicating through. Okay? And as such, she sometimes struggles with pride, especially as she's become kind of the figurehead of the good side, and all of these people are coming to meet her and telling her, I dreamt about you. You were the beacon of hope for me. It's hard for her to not feel herself kind of feeling important. The pride of that is something that she, as a human person, struggles with. And it's something that becomes a struggle for her relationship with God and her role in this whole battle of good versus evil. Flag. The Antichrist. He has supernatural powers. He is not just like a representative chill dude. He is not a chill dude. And he does have telepathic powers, but it's something where his powers, they wane sometimes, you come to realize that as scary and intimidating as he is, that he is not infallible. So there is some complexity to him because he has this kind of weird thing where I wouldn't say charming isn't the right word. He's sort of like a car salesman where he tries to be charming, but he's actually really bad at it, and it's very easy for people to see through his charm. People will choose him not because they think that he's the right choice morally, ethically. They choose him because they think he'll win. Or like I said before, that sense of being indebted to him. Or also fear that they will die a terrible, painful death if they don't. The vibe is off with him. There's no farce about him actually being like good or anything, because he tries to present himself that way, but he's not. Ironically, he's not a good liar. So it's interesting. It's interesting that the Antichrist tries to lie, tries to trick people, but he's actually fairly transparent in the things that he says, and he's not good at concealing his true nature. We have Nick Andros, who Nick is both deaf and mute. Life is hard enough for Nick before any of this bullshit. And so you can imagine how much harder it is for him during this initial stages of the chaos and the world is ending and all of this stuff. Him not being able to speak or to hear, and yet he as a character has such strong instincts. You come to find has very good leadership qualities. As he gets into the good side, the free zone or whatever, he becomes highly respected. He is very reliable. He has a lot of very good, positive characteristics that you would associate with a generally good person. Part of his significance, and this other character, Tom Cullen, who is a mentally disabled man. When he and Nick meet, and the way Nick communicates is by writing, and Tom can't read, it's this ironic thing where they form this very close relationship, where they rely on each other a lot, even though they struggle to communicate so much. And that's something that you may have heard, even if you haven't read The Stand or seen the miniseries. Tom Cullen is the character who he spells out moon all the time, and he'll say like M-O-O-N, that spells Nebraska or whatever. And that's got like one of his trademark things that he says. But these two characters, I think part of their significance in this story is that if you were the one who was in charge of, okay, it's the end of the world, this is a battle between good and evil, we are getting ready to fight evil for the life. We are all that is left of the human species, and if we lose this battle to evil, there is no coming back from this. We have to win. Assemble your team. Not that they wouldn't be welcome, but that you wouldn't necessarily think that, oh, these are two characters that are going to play a pivotal role in this battle. But guess what, motherfucker? They do. I think that that's kind of in tune with a lot of things from the Bible. I'm sorry if I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure that it's like, oh, God works in mysterious ways. But part of that is like, he will use people for his own purposes. And so if he has a thing he wants to do, he's not necessarily going to choose the most predictable person to get the job done. He has his reasons. And you know what? The fact that Tom is mentally disabled, the specific way that Tom is, serves a purpose and helps the good side. And so there's this value to their specific story, their character arc within the overall narrative. There's another character, Franny Goldsmith. Look, I'll be honest, I thought she was kind of annoying. I didn't really care that much about her as a character, but she is significant because she's pregnant. And so the man that she got pregnant from, he was not immune to the superflu the way that she is. And so it's bringing up this thing of like, okay, the world has ended. 99% of the population is gone. If we're going to survive as a civilization, we need to have babies. Will my child even survive because one of his parents wasn't immune? Does it even matter if both parents are immune? Is it still possible that the baby won't be, and that as soon as they're born, they're going to get sick with Captain Trips and die right away? And so it's this important thing, again, because the population has dwindled so much, it's very important and very relevant, and it's this big question that we have to kind of wait to find out how that all goes down. There's Stu Redman at the beginning of all of this. The CDC was made aware that he seemed to be immune despite the fact that people were dropping like flies around him. Unfortunately for Stu, he was held there so that they could experiment on him to try to see why he was immune and if they could somehow use that. And so he has a whole story arc with that. There's also another character named Larry Underwood. His story is kind of funny because he is a character who gets a very strong character arc. Where he starts and where he ends up are completely different. But it's funny because if you've ever heard that song, Baby Can You Dig Your Man? That's supposed to be Larry Underwood before the world went to crap. He was a musician, and that was his big hit, Baby Can You Dig Your Man? Because it was so popular, it's just this song that people will sing, and throughout the story, not realizing that it's his song half the time, he starts off as very selfish, self-absorbed. In my opinion, probably has the best story arc out of any of the characters. There is a character named Trash Can Man who, again, maybe you've heard, even if you haven't seen the miniseries, you've maybe heard My Life for You. That's the thing that he says to Randall Flagg. The Trash Can Man is also schizophrenic, and he also likes to play with fire. So, unfortunately, because he becomes aligned with the evil side, his mental state is used. There is a pretty clear distinction between that and the way that, for example, Tom Cullen is treated by the other side. And the last character I'm going to mention is a character, Harold Lauder. Back at the beginning, he actually teams up with Franny Goldsmith because they're the only two people that didn't perish in their neighborhood. And so Harold, he's only a teenager. I think he's like 16 or something. Being young, and also just kind of his personality, he's doesn't feel very good about himself. But when he teams up with Franny, he starts to see himself as her protector, and he kind of thinks that there's going to be something between them. And she just doesn't feel that way about him at all. It's something that, in the grand scheme of things, the world is ending, everything's falling apart. Who gives a shit about this sort of thing? People do. That it's like, even when all of this stuff that is so much bigger and should be so much more important is happening, it still hurts when the girl you like rejects you. I can't say that Harold has his character arc is as satisfying as Larry Underwood's, but Harold is a very interesting character to read. I can't wait to hear more about this character. I am locked in and compelled when I'm reading about this character. But that to be said, he's not like a likable character. My favorite thing about The Stand is you get these very normal people with different skill sets trying to come together and rebuild civilization. And all of that is happening while there is this constant threat of death. Still, you survived. You were immune to this illness that spread across the globe. And yet, there is still this impending threat of death and doom because people just can't coexist. There's so few people left, and there still needs to be more death. I think it's something that as I was reading it at the beginning, I was getting I wasn't frustrated. I didn't know what was important and what wasn't, right? Like you get a sense of like, okay, we're going through all these different characters. Are all of these people gonna matter in the long run? And you're trying to keep track of everybody. I just can't fit all of this information in my head at once. So I have to pick and choose what's gonna stay and what's gonna go. And that's me as somebody who's writing notes as I read, which obviously the average person isn't doing. I imagine that all the best parts of this story, you would get it with this, I'm sure. But at the same time, I don't regret reading this version, because when you like something, like actually like something, then you're not upset at the prospect of having more of it. I wasn't in a rush. I allowed myself to take my time and just enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. And I did. My favorite part about this book is all of those characters who don't seem like they fucking matter do. And it's in these small, inconsequential ways, or it seems inconsequential, right? Like it's characters who like, okay, I learn a little bit about this person, but then they will play this absolutely pivotal role for something that seems innocuous in the moment. But then at the end of the book, it's like, oh, well, this person only survived because that person did this. And oh, this could never have happened if this other thing hadn't happened first. And you come to understand the importance of all of these characters who don't seem important. But I think that's the point, though, is that it's like, oh, all these people who don't seem important are, even if it's a small moment, but that moment was crucial. That moment mattered. That person mattered. When you look at things through that lens of like the side of good, and how if you're looking at this through a religious lens, obviously good versus evil, it's like how God uses people, and all the people who are left who think that they're not important and that they don't have value. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, like you wouldn't feel good if you knew it's like, well, my value on this earth was to make sure that somebody else lived because they were important. But if you're able to set your ego aside and look at the big picture, I wasn't important as an individual person. These events happening were important. They did matter. And I was a crucial puzzle piece. Maybe I wasn't the flashiest, most colorful piece, but I was a piece. I was a piece of the puzzle. It's like all these characters, and it's like, well, who matters? And it's like, they all do. And it's hard to keep track of all of them, but it's the principle. It's the principle of the thing. They all mattered, even the ones that you barely heard about. And that's something that kind of leads us into the second book that I wanted to talk about, The End of the World as We Know It. Now, there are different sections in this book. They have part 1, which is called Down with the Sickness, part 2, The Long Walk, part 3, Life Was Such a Wheel, and part 4, Other Worlds Than These. And so these different parts focus on different parts of the narrative of the stand. Down with the Sickness, that refers to the initial spread of Captain Tripp's. The Long Walk is referring to that period of time where people are traveling to either join the good side or the evil side, etc. Now, like I said, there's like over 30 stories in this. I have a handful that are all going to be from familiar names. All of these short stories, they're not characters that we read about in The Stand. This is meant to be an insight into all the characters that went unmentioned, the other survivors that weren't, the main characters or whatever. But because it is Stephen King approved, it is canon. I almost forgot the word there. Okay, so the first story that I want to tell you about is called The Trips by Ralph James White. Familiar name on this channel. This is about a young boy named Talik who lives in a poor, crime-ridden neighborhood. He comes across this hoodlum who stole his mother's purse, I believe, or stole money from him or something, and he wants to get it back. But this other guy, I believe his name was Fat Steve, was sick. And so it's something where it's like, well, don't go near him. You know, at this point, people don't really understand that some people are immune and some people aren't. And if you're not, then you're gonna get it. Very early stages, people not really understanding how the sickness works yet. During all of this, some violence breaks out. Alec runs home to his mother and his baby sister. He's been having these dreams of Mother Abigail, but sometimes he'll talk to other family members, like his sister, and she doesn't know what he's talking about. She doesn't have those dreams. There's so much violence happening outside, and they are just kind of holed up, hoping that nobody tries to break into their home and that they'll be safe. Alec learns the hard way that just because somebody isn't having dreams of Mother Abigail doesn't mean that they're not having dreams. Because as I will remind you, Mother Abigail is not the only one who appears in people's dreams. We're going to keep it pretty vague here because most of these stories are between 20 to 30 pages. So in an attempt to not completely spoil them, they're going to have to be left kind of vague. You know, I'm sure you understand. It didn't make me cry, but it did make my eyes water. Oh, this Alec, that poor baby. I want to baby him. He's just a little boy. He's like 10. And there's violence and chaos outside of his windows. And then it's like any scrap of safety is taken away from him. I feel like it's something that it's picking up on something that is real. There really are young children with violence and chaos outside of their windows who are holed up inside of their homes hoping nobody tries to break in. There are kids living in poverty and violence every day. And so this is just a kid that's already getting shit on by life, getting shit on a little bit harder. It's just crazy sometimes how quickly an author can get you emotionally attached to a character. Again, this is like 20 pages long. There's also this quote in the story that says, "It was also not uncommon to see people in the hood who'd been abused redirect their trauma onto someone weaker and more vulnerable than themselves." The way that people react to crazy circumstances like this, people who are in survival mode will do what they think they need to do to survive. But when you're a kid, you're at a bit of a disadvantage for knowing who you can trust and what the right thing to do is. A lot of young, scared children that don't have the slightest clue what they're supposed to do. The second story I want to bring up is called Moving Day by Richard Chizmar. This is about a guy named Tommy Harper who everyone died. Pretty much the whole town is dead. His family is dead. And so he doesn't know what to do. I guess that's something I maybe neglected to mention about The Stand, is that I said that people can experience dual dreams. But there are people who only receive dreams or visions from one of the sides. And there's other people who don't seem to receive any. So it can be a bit of a crapshoot in that way. Now, when Tommy loses his entire family, he ends up holding up at this water tower where he can get this view of the town and kind of see if there's anybody coming and going. Basically, the story is kind of about being stuck in this weird limbo. He's alone and he's stagnant. Occasionally, he will see people, but he's afraid to introduce himself. He's afraid of leaving what he knows and taking the risk of trying to find a community or safety numbers. This story has a lot to do with that kind of internal struggle. There's nobody here. If I don't leave, I will be alone. Another story is Till Human Voices Wake Us and We Drown by Poppy Z. Brite. This story felt the most kind of different out of the group. This is about a guy named Seth who sees an old man on the beach. And this old man is holding this thing called called a Martha's Vineyard. It's called a Jenny Hanover, which, Google it. I would encourage, if you don't know what that is, I would encourage you to Google it and check that out. People be doing weird things, playing God and creating monsters of their own from dead creatures, sewing the top half of one creature to the bottom half of another creature. So Seth sees this old man on the beach holding a Jenny Hanover. He's like, well, that's weird. And I guess it's something that gets sold to tourists a lot. Like, oh, this is a mermaid. It's seen as like a trinket. The man he sees on the beach goes by Mole. You come to find that Mole has a mermaid. And he suspects that he's going to die soon. And so he would like Seth to start watching over his mermaid. You're like, what the fuck does this have to do with The Stand? Well, this does take place within The Stand universe. There is the sickness going around. Seth, his family is gone, and there are dreams and visions and whatnot. But there was so much else going on with the whole mermaid angle. It does seem a little out of left field. I'm not saying that this is the case, but what I am saying is that it wouldn't surprise me if this story kind of already existed in some form before this opportunity came along, and then it was maybe altered slightly in order to fit into the Stand universe. This story could very well exist without being a part of the Stand universe, and so I enjoyed the story. I don't know, something about the supernatural mermaid element felt slightly out of place to me, even though I can't complain that there's something supernatural happening, but it's just felt like a little bit a different tone. I wasn't expecting a nautical turn. Most of these other stories are so heavily incorporated into the Stand universe that it would have to just be very similar circumstances where it was a different apocalypse or whatever, where this didn't even need to be an apocalypse. It could just be a guy finding another dude on the beach and he's like, hey, I have a mermaid. It didn't even need to be the apocalypse for this story to happen. It just felt like a bit of an outsider comparatively. But if you do read it, I was Googling so much to look up what certain things looked like, different mythical creatures, and it was a trip. There's The Legion of Swine by S.A. Cosby. This is about a man named Woodrow who has lost his wife. His son was in the military, and so he doesn't really know if his son is still alive or not. And so he is living alone now on his farm, where he has pigs. And some strangers who are traveling end up stopping at his home. There's this tension in the air because these are strangers. Woodrow isn't opposed to helping people who are just passing through, but obviously there's this hint of distrust or paranoia. You don't know what these people's intentions are, what they might try to take from you. So, oh my gosh, like, again, these are all short stories, but the tension was so palpable in this. And I really enjoyed how this author, they created just such a heavy sense of foreboding with this conundrum of letting the strangers into his house or not. And you're just waiting with this tension sitting in your chest because you're like, okay, something's going to happen. I can feel it. Like, it's just... I haven't read this author before, but I liked this story a lot. I thought the ending was very satisfying. This was one of the stories that really stuck out to me. Okay, another story is called The Story I Tell is the Story of Smolas by Paul Tremblay. Okay, so the way that the author chose to tell this story is from the perspective of this creepy weirdo who's talking to us, and he's telling us this story about something that he witnessed. This guy was friends with a man named Art. Art apparently, in this battle of good and evil, the good and evil forces are fighting over Art. They both want him to come to their side. And Art is like, I'm just going to stay home. Art wants to sit this one out, but both good and evil are like, no. Like, you're going to be important, Art. And they're not necessarily saying this directly to him through dreams. They're sending this message to their followers that you need to go get Art. Go to his house and go get him. You need to bring him to the good side or the bad side. He's going to play an important role in things. And so people keep trying to come to Art's house and be like, come with us. And he's like, no. So yeah, you can imagine maybe how the different sides react to Art refusing to give in to their demands, to go along with them, for trying to stick to his own path, for not believing that he's some big, important, pivotal role in anything, and not believing he has any reason to go anywhere with anybody. All of this matters, and it's interesting, but the thing is, it's something that's like less important, but more important, unsure. There's just the whole thing about Art's parents, about his mother and his father, who were getting a divorce, but they still lived together. And then they both got sick. The mother was dying in the bedroom. The father was dying on the couch in the living room. And then something happens regarding his parents that had me all the way fucked up. All the way. I have not recovered. I'm still thinking about it. Personally, I'm of the impression, how dare you? I was so in my feels at that. Next up, we have He's a Righteous Man by Ronald Malfi. This is about Zara and Benjamin. Zara is pregnant with Benjamin's child. They live in this little town where there's like this little community who has kind of strict rules, and it seems as though Zara is happy to play along with the rules and to be a member in high regard in the community. Benjamin is a bit of an outsider. He seems to fit in less well. He drinks a lot. He's he comes across in the beginning of the story like a bit of a jerk, honestly. But then, the turn of the tides. So there's a prophet named Jacob who travels around and talks about this book that he published. Shortly before Captain Trips started going around. He basically predicted everything that happens about Captain Trips and about this battle of good and evil and Mother Abigail and all these things. And he basically tells people, I didn't warn anybody because I didn't know that it was a prophecy. I had this concept pop into my head and I thought it was just this creative story and I wrote it down. I didn't know it was true when I wrote it or that it would come true. But he goes around and kind of talks to people about that experience and says, like, I don't think I have the power of prophecy anymore because, nothing new has come to me, but all I can do is try to give people hope that, there is a God and that he, obviously communicating with, if not him, then maybe somebody else, and that there may be answers coming to, life's questions. I don't know. So Prophet Jacob is coming to this town to talk to them. And it doesn't go according to plan. I didn't see this coming at all. And I, delighted isn't the right word, but it is, it is delightful to be surprised in such a manner. It is, and I was. And so, Ronald Malfi, I still love you. Another, dude, all of these stories are good. All of them are good. Let me tell you more. Grand Junction by Chuck Wendig. there's a character named Leaf. I don't remember exactly how old he is, but he's younger, but he has a really good aim. So he goes hunting a lot, and usually it only takes one shot. And he gets the buck or whatever he's hunting, and he's just really, really good at that. The leader of Grand Junction goes by Mother May I, and she's like, I think there's some trouble afoot. This is taking place 30 years after the end of the stand. So this is kind of the aftermath of it. She's like, I think that there might be trouble brewing down yonder. And so she wants to take Leaf because of his aim, that he might be useful. She's going to take him and some other people and go try to nip this in the bud. Because she's like, I don't want there to be more evil. We gotta knock it out of here, right? So he goes with her. And things don't go according to plan. Okay, well, why? Why does she think that there is evil? Well, it's like she has knowledge that there is leadership in this other town that is encouraging cannibalism. And so she's like, well, if that ain't evil, then what the heck is, right? And so that's why that's why she's saying she wants to go there. And so Leaf, this young guy, learns the hard way that things are not always as they appear. This also very good. You get the sense that things are not as they seem, but you don't know how or why. I really, really loved the ending of this one. Honestly, it's not even just like, oh, the ending's good. Like, it's beautiful. A lot of stories that are very dark, filled with despair. It was very nice just to have this little glimmer of beauty in the whole thing. Now, enough of that. So the last story that I want to tell you about is called The Unfortunate Convalescence of the SuperLawyer by Matt Cassidy, another regular name on this channel. So this is about a man who, when Captain Trips started going around, he's like, I need to not be in such a populated area as Phoenix, so I'm going to drive towards Utah, because to him that's just what makes sense. And so oh my gosh, okay, so he's wakes up and he's just in the middle of the road, not in his car, he's outside of his car, face to the ground, and he doesn't remember how or why he's in the middle of the road. He's very confused. I should go back to my car. This is weird. You get a little background on this man. You find out that he was a lawyer, but he had a passion for drawing. And when he was younger, he loved to draw comic book type heroes and things, and he even started drawing SuperLawyer because that's his realistic, solid, reliable job, whereas doing his real passion, which was drawing comics, would have been unreliable. He really craved stability as an adult. But he did still have a little part of him that, again, the SuperLawyer, he had that kind of character that he created. So we have a little bit of background. There's this thing he keeps repeating about his father, because when his father gave him this car and he gave him the keys to this car, there was a key ring that had initials on it. And he said to his dad, those aren't my initials. He's like, what do you mean? That's you. And he's like, those aren't my initials. And it was SL. And his dad said to him, oh, that means SuperLawyer. And at the time, our character hadn't created SuperLawyer yet. He was going to be a lawyer, but the SuperLawyer comic book character didn't exist. Come to find out, his father had dementia. This moment of his father giving him this key ring with the wrong initials has this strong mental hold on him. And he has such an association with that and the death of his father. He ended up having to take care of his father due to his early onset dementia. This moment where he's like, oh, is it possible he actually meant that? Or was he just covering for his forgetfulness, for giving me the wrong initials? And he keeps repeating that. Those aren't my initials. So there's so much confusion. You're jumping back and forth between these memories he has with his father, but then on top of that, there's these earthquakes that keep happening. It's adding to this confusion. There's lyrics from All Along the Watchtower. You know, I know not originally, but In My Heart and Mind by Jimi Hendrix. He's just trying to figure out what is going on. And there's so much confusion between not remembering why he was in the road, the earthquakes, the flashes of memories from his past, this voice in his head telling him that he needs to leave his car there. Leave your car and start walking. And he hears that voice in his head and he doesn't know, is it the voice of his father? Is it the voice of God? Is he losing his mind? He doesn't know, but he just hears this voice telling him to do that. So he does. He just walks away from it. This sounds so all over the place, and that's how it feels when you read it. But just know that it all comes together. All of this confusion and the voices and the memories and the earthquakes, all of it, everything, all of it comes together. And it makes perfect and beautiful and tragic sense. And in case there is any remaining confusion, the author was kind enough to leave an author's note to explain the significance specifically of the initials and that phrase, those aren't my initials. And it is very heavily incorporated, not just into the world that The Stand created. I felt like this one really got to the heart of The Stand conceptually. So, I'm getting emotional. But I think, just to kind of wrap up the video, it's like the concept of The Stand, it's just life. And it's just about how important all of the unimportant people are. And how important all these seemingly pointless events, and how you never know. You never know the trickle effect. You never know how something you do or something you say is going to affect somebody else's story. We think about ourselves and we think about our lives, but how interwoven our storylines are with each other, and how cyclical life is. How much bigger the concept of humanity and the concept of life and the concept of when you started getting it into fate. It's so easy to just think that it doesn't matter, that nothing matters. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But it's just crazy how sometimes things that just you never in a million years thought would matter in the slightest make a huge difference in one way or another. It sounds stupid, but I guess I have such a nihilistic side to me where I find a strange comfort in thinking that nothing really matters, and that ultimately, while things matter in the here and now, that the people around you are impacted by you, and society is impacted by your actions and whatnot, your community, your friendships, all of that. But that in the grand scheme of things, that at some point in time, our sun is going to explode and it's going to, take out the earth. And in the grand scheme of things, whether you were a homeless person who died on the streets or you were president of the United States, you're both going to be dead. Like, it ultimately doesn't really matter. But there is something beautiful and touching about entertaining the idea that it does matter. And that there is some sort of point to things, I guess. I enjoyed The Stand so much. Well, I can't say that it didn't feel long because that's not true. It did. It did feel long, but I wasn't mad about it. But the short stories from The End of the World as We Know It, each story was so good. It was so satisfying. It adds to the world without changing it. I would encourage you to not be intimidated by either of their size. They're very good reads. And again, especially with The End of the World as We Know It, because you don't even have to read those in order. You can just sort of pick and choose the authors that you know first, and then as soon as you get into it, and I suspect you will, then you're just breezing through it, man. Like, it's just, I felt practically giddy reading it. I just really thoroughly enjoyed having more of that world. All right, well, enough of me rambling about that. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you the next time around. Bye! There's gotta be some way out of here. So the joker to the thief. There's too much confusion. Can you know